Corley Moore coming at you. Wanted to talk very briefly before the scrap starts tonight. And if you know me, you know that I love the vigilantes. I love the like-minded souls, and I'm always looking for ways that we can have more interaction. One of the things that every vigilante says when they join is they're looking to connect with those like-minded souls. They're looking to connect with other vigilantes and people who feel the way they feel. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to make that happen. So far, I love Patreon. I love Patreon for bringing us together, but it hasn't created that the ability to share information and things the way I wanted. But one thing we did discover was that Discord is integrated into Patreon. So we've been working for the last couple weeks to launch a Discord server where the vigilantes can get together and hang out. Now, I'll be the first person to say I am not a tech guru. I'm much better at forcing doors and hook and sealing. I'm better at destroying stuff than I am at using technology. But that being said, Discord has so many options that look like they could be phenomenal for the vigilantes and for our growth and for the fellowship and the camaraderie that we want to share. It's got chat rooms that you can post in, separated by category, where we can have great discussions. It's got voice channels you can jump in and have voice discussions with people at the drop of a hat without needing to start a Zoom call or anything. You just drop in and drop out. You can share screens. We have plans. People have plans to share classes that they've built so they can get feedback before they go and teach those classes. I mean, there's so much that could be used for this Discord server, and we're just scratching the surface. So get in, come be a part of it, man. It looks to be an incredible platform. And if you want to be a part of it, head over to patreon.com/thevigilantes. Become a part, man. If you're not a vigilante, why not? $5 a month. You can't even afford a fancy coffee nowadays for $5. So $5 a month, you're a member of the like-minded souls. So come be a part. Looking forward to seeing and talking to you in the Discord. Stay safe.
Introducing the Affordable Bailout Prop, another innovative training solution by Affordable Drill Towers. The Affordable Bailout Prop is a durable and affordable training tool that allows firefighters to enhance their skills with real-world training in your parking lot or on your apparatus floor. Most fire departments only require annual PSS qualification, which isn't enough to develop muscle memory. When seconds count, you must be able to deploy your PSS and quickly escape by seating your hook in the sill or using a remote anchor point. With an overall height under 12 feet, a 5x7 footprint, and 12-inch heavy-duty swivel casters with double locks, the Affordable Bailout Prop can be easily moved between your parking lot and apparatus floor. Constructed of pressure-treated 4x4s, the window frame dimensions mimic the Denver drill window prop with a sill height of almost 8 feet, featuring a pressure-treated 2x12 sill. The rappel wall is made of 8 2x10s screwed into batten boards. All parts, including the windowsill and rappel wall, are designed to be easily replaceable if they become worn. A vertical ladder provides access to the deck, which is approximately 4 foot above ground level. In addition to window and ladder bailout drills, you can also train on removing victims through the window, whether handing the victim to another firefighter on the ladder or using the ladder as a high point. Don't stop with rescue drills. Consider advancing a hose line through the window and learn methods to overcome the challenges. Or hone the mechanics of VES, Vent Enter Search. The uses are endless and up to your imagination, creating an enormous value. With its inspiration coming from the events of FDNY's Black Sunday, Affordable Drill Towers donates 10% of all proceeds from the Affordable Bailout Prop to the Lieutenant Joseph P. DiBernardo Memorial Foundation. The Affordable Bailout Prop is available as a kit that you assemble, or fully assembled, where we train you how to assemble in the future. Elevate your training regimen with the Affordable Bailout Prop, setting a new standard in fire department training excellence. Reach us at 84455 Towers or info@affordabledrilltowers.com.
Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. It is weekly scrap number 281. My guest tonight is James Geering. He is a former firefighter, stuntman, exercise physiology graduate. Originally from England, James moved to the U.S. in 2002 and spent 14 years as a firefighter and paramedic, serving on both the East and West Coast. He is the host of the Behind the Shield podcast and the author of One More Light, Life, Death, and Humanity Through the Eyes of a Firefighter, and his new book, Kinder, which we're going to talk about tonight. But I'm excited for this one. I'm super excited. Welcome back, my brother, to the Scrap. It's been a few years, but welcome back to the Scrap as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 281.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited, and the audience is here and getting logged in and ready to go. Is there anything I missed? Anything you want to add to the intro?
No. I mean, firstly, it's just good to get back on the show. I'm looking forward to getting you on my show. I think we're doing that in next week, I think it is.
Yes,
but
sir.
I love these conversations. I love all these other podcasts because side by side, we're just having incredible conversations. You just had your book released. So, I mean, one of my favorite things about the fire service training was the search, and it's a super perishable skill. So, yeah, I mean, nothing to add. Just I'm excited for this conversation and hopefully get some good questions out there on all the things that we're going to discuss today.
And people are logging in and they're getting their questions ready. Get your questions ready for James. It's going to be a fun one. Get your questions in. Sam is watching the chat and he will post those questions to us. So let's talk about those beautiful sponsors. We'll get those done so we can get to scrapping. When it comes to performance under pressure, you need equipment that won't let you down. That's where American-made Snap Tight comes in. It is built tough for firefighters. Snap-Tight hose is engineered to perform under pressure. Plus, Snap-Tight hoses are easy to deploy and even easier to rely on, with unmatched heat resistance to abrasion and extreme temperatures. Here's the best part. They offer guaranteed shipping and 4-week lead times. Visit snaptighthose.com to learn more or find a distributor near you. Snap-Tight hose, reliable, durable, and ready when you are. Affordable Drill Towers, on a mission to bring you cost-effective and versatile training props, like the Affordable Bailout Prop, which allows you to practice window bailouts, and ladder high-point rescues. Of course, they also make the Affordable Standpipe Prop, which you can roll into the classroom for standpipe theory and then roll it into the parking lot and pump realistic flows and pressures. Their mainstay, the best, with more than 60 drill towers installed, the Affordable Drill Tower. It comes in several configurations and standard with a standpipe system. You can choose from 1 or 2 sets of stairs integrated into your existing Connex boxes for multi-story access or freestanding on a slab. All models are NFPA 1402 compliant and gain you ISO credit. The only thing that you can't do on an Affordable Drill Tower is live fire training. Call Steve at 844-55-TOWER or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Firefighter safety and accountability starts with being able to quickly find and identify individual firefighters operating on the fire ground. Identifier Safety combines the best in photoluminescent materials for durable firefighter identification solutions that can glow for up to 20 hours with no switches, no batteries, which means you can easily and rapidly identify firefighters by name, unit, or assignment, even under hot fire conditions. All specifically designed and tested for the rigors of the job. Be seen, on scene, identifiersafety.com. And last but not least, Insight Fire Training, thermography certified fire service professionals. Insight Fire Training specializes in training individuals across the globe in the tactical use of thermal imaging cameras in emergency services. Insight Fire Training developed the world's first thermography-based collegiate firefighter certification and trains firefighters, manufacturers, and industry professionals across the globe. Insight Fire Training, check them out. Of course, I love Andy Starnes, one of my favorite people. So with all that being said and done, we got through the sponsors and we're ready to get to the scrap. I'm going to read you a few comments coming at you from YouTube, which is let's scrap. Some people talking to Sam and saying Sam the man. And Jason Haynes is saying, let's go. James is a solid brother doing solid brother things. And then there's a few LFGs coming in there. LFGs checking in from North Florida. And what up with some LFGs? So there we go. Michael Ramirez said, looking forward to reading Kinder. You should absolutely. And we're going to talk about Kinder, but I don't want to hype it too much right out the gate here. So let's start with James Geering in the studio with us, live here with the audience, but behind the shield. 1,000, is it 1,024? Is that where you're at? Or did I get off on my count?
No, I think I have to update my website a little bit. I get behind sometimes, but on the actual podcast release, I think we're at 10:27 or 28
Okay.
now.
Okay.
So
So, dude, unbelievable accomplishment. Unbelievable. I'm glad you came on here to celebrate 1,000. But no. What did you have any idea the impact it would have when you started it?
I mean this kind of impact, absolutely not. No, but it's funny because when people ask about starting a podcast themselves, I always say consistency is the most important thing. Like, don't bite off more than you can chew. Put out as many as you feel comfortable doing, because you will, just like you did, turn around and go, oh my god, there's 100, there's 200, there's 300, there's 1,000 people download, 10,000, 100,000. It just grows and grows. And it's funny because some of the old numbers were actually skewed because we discovered that there's bots, and iTunes was downloading every single episode whether someone listened or not. So it's been humbling as well. Some of the huge numbers that we had back in the day are not quite as impressive anymore.
Right.
But that's the people who are actually listening, which is good. But no, I mean, having the origin story of just wanting the suffering and wanting the funerals and all the things that we see just to lessen, to diminish. And here we are 8 years later, and all these other podcasts as well, and you're hearing people talking about mental health and the work week and relationships. And it's not solely because of this, but we're all part of this tapestry, we're all part of this movement. So 8 years on, looking back, I mean, it's incredible. And you and I having this conversation now, we wouldn't have met if each of us didn't have a podcast. So that's the magic.
No, and it is dude, your impact and being the champion that you have, and you're averaging, if I'm doing my math correctly, about 125 episodes a year, which is just you talk about consistency, brother. That I think I'm proud of my one a week. You know what I'm saying? My weekly, and that's an insane pace. And believe me, I say that with the utmost uh, like compliment. I hope you take it that way.
Well, I mean, was doing it for 2 years, and that was two a week. And then when COVID hit, I'd already transitioned out because, as a lot of us are aware, you can't really speak too firmly when you work for a department.
Hmm.
You've got a uniform, you've got a badge, and there's people that can tell you you can't say this anymore, you can't have a podcast, or you can't have the social media account. So when I stepped away, it gave me the ability to speak for everyone else. And then COVID hit, and I'm like, all right, this disinformation, just the disregarding of the middle ground common sense. Let's make people physically and mentally healthier during this. That's when I added another one. That's when we got to 3 a week. And so that's been really, what's really driven the numbers. And then now, because there's so many, it's awesome because I can repost some of the older ones as a
Hmm.
bonus episode. I'm not putting it out as a new episode, just reposting it. But people are like, oh, I didn't realize you had Wim Hof or Hoist Gracie or, John Travolta or whoever it was. So now you've got all these, people that listen today in 2025 rediscovering,
The
ones
original.
that I did 8 years ago. And it sounds completely different. There's no sponsor. I'm kind of fumbling around and the sound quality isn't as good, but they were great conversations too. So I love the fact with podcasts that, it's the gift that keeps on giving. They're always there to help people.
No, and it's crazy to look at the analytics, because you can look and see how different ones performed and how they did, and to see, one that I release now would have been like a mega hit way back then, just because the growth, And so when I bring on someone who hasn't been on in a couple of years, they're like, "Well, I told you everything I really had to say the first time," and I'm like, "Yes, but you don't understand how many more people you're going to reach, and so please come back in and have the conversation." Are you ready for your first question from the audience?
Absolutely.
It's coming from Fireman 718, and I think this is right down the pipe of what we're talking about, which is, how did your interest in mental health start?
It's fun. I mean, really, the origin story probably is a lot of us. It really is about 9 years ago. We had a suicide here in Florida, Chief David Dangerfield, and he made a Facebook post before he took his own life. And he said, PTSD is real. I'm so sorry to my family and my friends. Um, and it really just punched us all in the face. And I think that really started the conversation. That was just a few short months before I started the podcast. So, that's when I started writing some of the blogs. And but it wasn't like I looked at my own mental health and had this aha moment. And I didn't have even like a downward spiral, severe downward spiral, like so many of us do, so many people on the show have. um so it was more a case like, well, then what is going on? And then if I'm not in crisis myself at the moment, then how can I be part of the movement to help people? And then learn about these tools and then use these tools so I don't spiral downwards. Because I mean, obviously, it's not like my life has been easy so far. It's been horrible things that have happened, um, but it was just trying to get that conversation. And it's funny because the Dark Side Project, which is a Facebook page I started about 8 years ago. The very first video I made was, I'm James Geering and I have PTSD, because that's what we were calling it back then. Now, what's amazing is you fast forward 8 years, and I realized I didn't have PTSD. I was sleep deprived. I had moral injury from several factors.
Sure.
But then you have PTSD, which is our men and women that are truly, being crushed, having flashbacks and nightmares, and like our military members that hear a car backfire and then they're under the table. That's more your classical PTSD. So what I love now is it's become this nuanced conversation, and we finally realized all these extremely powerful, um, influential factors that now we can see them, we can start addressing them, like unaddressed childhood trauma when we enter the profession. What happened to us from in vitro to being pinned, sleep deprivation, organizational betrayal, marital problems, the impact of alcohol in our sleep, side effects of psychiatric meds. I mean, there's so many levels, but once you can see them, now you can figure out in your life what is going on. So it's really been a slow burn, is my point. It's a
Sure.
snowball, and it's just grown and grown and grown to now where I really feel like we have actionable things, that the tools we can use, everything from EMDR to psychedelic therapy to equine therapy. There are so many things that you can dive into and figure out what your individual toolbox will be, and then address the work which I'm passionate about, and get our first responders not only well rested again, but get it back to where people are lining up around the building to vie for just a handful of spots, so we
Right.
can set the physical bar up too. So this is what exciting is, that we can make a huge dent in this. We can't save everyone, but we can save so many people. If now we can see it, now the next thing is to stop talking about stigma and actually remove the barriers to entry and start fixing the things that are broken.
Ooh, I love that. Stop talking about stigma, because that's been a conversation that's kind of been a rallying cry for a while. 1,028 episodes, again, unreal. But what's changed in your what's the way I want to ask this question? What's been your biggest epiphany or reversal of what you thought from the beginning to where you're at now? And I know we're always learning, so it's not like you figured everything out, but from the start to where you're at now, how do you feel?
Um, I mean, initially it was from despair to hope. That's been a really good transition because of what I just said. The A few of the big ahas. I mean, I shout from the rooftops about this. This was really why I started the conversation, but really underlining the importance of sleep, which, I'll sleep when I'm dead. We've all grew up around that kind of, you know, fake machismo version of
Sure.
working without resting. Um, the impact of childhood, struggles on the first responder, the military member, whoever. I mean, if you look at some of these young firefighters that we lose, they've been on, a year or a year and a half. That really underlines that issue. So really identifying, and it's not even looking at it. The problem is in the fire service, we've looked at these issues like, oh, well, we'll have a screening so we don't have those people. Those people could be incredible police officers, firefighters, dispatchers, whoever it is. If you give them the tools to work through that trauma, then that becomes a strength. To me, when we use the word resilience, true resilience is you had struggles, you figured out the way to navigate them, and now, just like scar tissue, now you're a little bit stronger. So rather than going, oh, well, it's because of what we see, it's the same with cancer. Oh, well, cancer is the carcinogens. I work for Reedy Creek, the one that protects Disney World. They never see fire. And we lost so many firefighters to cancer. So if it was just the chemicals and, even putting turnouts, I didn't even put turnouts on very much there. So it's not even the PFAS, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you look at the way they work, they get worked into the ground running primarily EMS calls. So another huge truth, and it wasn't that I think differently. They were ideas at the beginning. Now they are bona fide, verified, hard truths, because in those thousands is everyone from neuroscientists, neurosurgeons, sleep medicine experts, and then all the first responders and military and strength and conditioning coaches and back injury specialists, and not a single person has ever said anything other than, if you don't sleep mentally and physically, you will break down, hands down, no question.
No question.
So it's more like, now I look at it as a court case. Now we've built so much evidence, you can't refuse the evidence anymore, which is why before we hit record, I was talking now about courageous leadership and cowardice in the fire service as far as advocating for your people, because the proof is irrefutable now. So rather than doing an MMPI and screening for mental health, how about we look at it as you do background checks, but we put counseling in at the front door. We make mental health the same as the push-ups in the academy, and you allow these new recruits to start forging that resilience through whatever struggles they brought in. And then again with the work week, giving them more rest and recovery between shifts so they can operate at the highest level. Because if we're talking about, for example, your book, A Primary Search, if you haven't slept for 2 days, how are you supposed to map out a smoky room in your mind through touch if you can't even, see straight? You're cross-eyed, you're so exhausted.
Cognitively just in the toilet, right?
Exactly. And that's, one of the most demanding things we do as a primary. It's terrifying, if you're in a house and you get disoriented, or, you thought you felt a window, you thought you're on the third wall, the fourth wall, or, that's where you need to be the most acutely focused. And, and then even driving to the call, same thing. And, pushing meds. So these are the truths that have really stood the test of time rather than changed my mind, is that these are some of the massive things that we have to change. And if we do that, like I said, we'll go back to, just like special forces, only the elite few get to be a firefighter or a police officer, which is the way it should be, because lives are in our hands. So the physical standards, the operational standards, and then the mental resilience standards too.
Nice. No, I love it. And so, like, to encapsulate it, not really, there hasn't been any massive 180s, more just like 360s as you examine the thing and then got reinforced in the direction you were going to begin with.
Yeah, because I hope when the listener hears, I'm not going in trying to ram my idea around someone's throat. I will play devil's advocate. I will, act like a student, because I'm a perpetual student. But, at the same time, if they're, if they're coming from a background where, they've done a lot of research and they've seen, for example, my sleep expert friends in the Navy, in the Navy SEALs, in the Army, in the Air Force, it's such a close parallel to the first responder community. So you're seeing this verified. So where I'll actually push back is when people on the show have that old school attitude, and then I'll challenge them and be like, well, all these people, these experts have said this. What do you think about this? So
Right.
Still trying to be open to new ideas, but at the same time, when you hear, no, James, there's no question, you need to sleep as a human being, especially if you're operating with people's lives. We're at the point now where we don't need to keep looking for someone that says, no, you don't need sleep. Even Jocko Willink, Jocko even conceded that we needed sleep. He's just one of, those anomalies that needs a little bit less sleep.
Less sleep.
But if you listen to him, he gets up early. A lot of times he goes to bed early too.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's Jim. We're hitting on it here, and you're already touching on it. The recruitment crisis in the fire service, like that is something that's on a lot of people's minds. Volunteer career across the board, no matter what we're talking about, the recruitment crisis. And you're talking all about it here. But what do you think the driving factor is in the fact, like you said, we used to have people wrapped around the buildings vying for a few spots, and now we're struggling to put bodies in seats and operating on mandatory forced overtime. And so talk to me. What do you think is the cause, especially with the number of people you've talked to?
Well, remind me again when you got hired.
When I got hired in 1997, February 3rd, 1997.
Before me. So when you went into the fire service, was there conversation when you went on the internet, when you went on Ask Jeeves or whatever you were doing back then? Did it bring up, divorce, cancer, alcoholism, or was it just, like the golden nuggets, how to ace your oral interview, and what were you being exposed to back then as far as the other side of the fire service when you researched it?
It was definitely more the latter, the more the glorious side of it. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was the same for me. So I literally, Ladder 49 came out the day I graduated Hialeah's Academy, for example. It was all, and I wasn't even, a legacy firefighter. I came from another country. It was done even differently there. There wasn't fire and EMS. So I knew nothing about the American Fire Service. So when I was coming in, I was just like, oh, hoses and ladders and fitness and, mustaches and getting babies and all that stuff. There was no question about, well, why do we work so many hours? And, what is mandatory overtime and all these other things, because we were just enamored with the job and you had a desire to serve. And that is an absolutely honorable way of entering. And I took it so seriously. I mean, I did the part-time academy while I worked full-time. I PT'd on my lunch break. I used to go to the academy early and do towers. And, I was driven to be one of those, get one of those spots. And that was, I came on 2004, so a few years after you. And at that time, again, everyone was fighting. Then I went out west, tested for Anaheim, and I've said this numerous times, but just in the written test. So after they'd screen people in the written test, there was 1,000 people for 30 spots.
Wow.
And in those, a lot of those people were, ambulance operators before, or wildland firefighters. They'd been explorers. I mean, they had a resume. It wasn't just like, they just finished fire academy. They had so much more than that. And that's where I think we should be. I've been where we should be. And if you look at where it started declining, it was less than 10 years ago. A lot of people 10 years ago was still having this level of competition. So it's obviously it's not just one thing, but I think the finger is always pointed. Well, kids today, they don't want to work. They're not as in shape, so that's why. And that's
the generational argument.
Yeah, which is kind of BS, because if you look at, yes, absolutely, we are getting fatter and sicker as a nation, and obviously there are more and more kids that are, obese, type 2 diabetes. I mean, even if they're not overweight, you look at their spines, you're like, oh my God, you're like an 80-year-old just from hunching over your device. That group exists and they're getting larger, there's no question. But if you think about the fit recruits, when you and I were kind of testing and trying to prepare, really it was kind of almost bodybuilder, workouts that we were doing. Now you've got CrossFit and mud runs and, strength and conditioning and yoga, and all these things are all completely in it. So a lot of people tell me that the fit recruits are really fit. They are great, prepared, tactical athletes. So that's the other side. But really what it boils down to is this generation, because they've been raised by us as we've evolved. And for example, the last 10 years had this mental health conversation. Our children are growing up in an environment where it's okay to talk about your feelings, where it's okay, to emote your struggles, and work through them. It's okay to go and see a counselor. And, I want to work on, my physicality. So then when they go to a profession, and let's use most suburban and urban ones as an example. And, let's just use my local one here, Marion County in Florida, 56 hours a week, mandatory overtime every couple of weeks. So that's an 80-hour work week. We've had 4 suicides in 4 years of young firefighters. There's alcoholism, there's cancer, there's, all the things. So when they're doing this, oh, I think I want to be a local firefighter, and they research that. If you were 18 and you went to Starbucks and they're like, oh, in 10 years, you'll be on your 3rd divorce and an alcoholic, you'd be like, well, wait a second, what the hell? I just want to be a firefighter. Where's all this come from? So this is the problem, is that because we haven't fixed the things that were broken, and we've asked our first responders to do more and more and more with less and less and less, because each person that doesn't stay, each retiree that decides, you know what, after 15 years, I'm done, each young recruit that starts in your department, you pay and train them, and then they leave and go into a different one in 2 years. That just adds more weight to the shoulders of everyone else. So if you think about, Hell Week in the Navy SEALs with log PT, you started off with 8 SEALs, or recruits, and now you've got 5, and you're still holding that same log. Right. So, this is the issue. Our biggest advocates, our biggest recruiters were firefighters that love the job. It says, you got to come work for this department. I still to this day shout from the rooftops about Anaheim, because it was, it's probably not as the same as it was, but when I was there, it was incredible and I loved it. And, we didn't have fitness standards because everyone was fit, because they understood the job, and their probation was revered around Southern California. Like if you didn't meet the bar, they would cut you. 25% of every class was cut by the first year.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how seriously they set that bar. So that's, you factor all those in, and then you see the bar coming down, and then they're like, oh, we used to take 5% of the list, 10% of the list. Now we're taking everyone. Now we're offering hiring bonuses just to come work. Clearly, there's a massive thing that we need to address, and that is fixing the things that are broken. And as I've said to people, what really irks me, and bearing in mind I haven't worked now for 6 years in the service, so now I'm back to pseudo civilian. People who work 40 hours a week tell firefighters that they don't deserve to work less than 56 or 80. I have a huge problem with that, because the guy that makes my coffee, and I love coffee, he taps out at 40 hours a week. But the person who's going to respond to, my infant choking or whatever it is going to wake up from a dead sleep, maybe 48 hours in, or, that 40 hours in, get in a rig, drive lights and sirens, opposing traffic, you know, then come to the house and then have to do, choking or pediatric algorithm or primary search, and then doff their gear and then have to do, burn treatment or whatever it is, intubate. We're okay with them working 56 hours or
Right.
80 hours. It's so backwards. And the thing that really gets me is I see now that in Florida there's a paradigm shift. There's the beginning of a revolution. In the last year, in 2024, 6 or 7 fire departments went to the 24/72,
Yes. Yes.
which is amazing, because they're either unions or chiefs or whoever was the one that kind of put it to the people in that particular department, realized that fiscally it makes the most sense. And sadly, that's really what makes people turn the corner.
Sure.
But they then were able to invest in their people. A young person now that sees the city of Gainesville and 24/72 and strength and conditioning and a high bar, and they're supposed to be an aggressive department and all these things. Now they're like, well, that sounds okay. And Gainesville in a few months will be fully staffed, because when you tell everyone you're going to do a better work week, people start testing with you. Pasco County's seen the same. Um, oh my goodness, where is it? Up in the Panhandle. I'm blanking on the name now. I can't believe I've forgotten the name. But so many people that have announced that they're going to it, their recruitment has gone through the roof again. So the way that we reverse this recruitment crisis is we finally address the things that stop people wanting to be firefighters. The same way in law enforcement, you put training back, you support your officers, you put fitness standards back. You give them the jiu-jitsu training, all the things that we need to fix the problems. You will have people wanting to be cops again. But we can't fix it by just shoving our head deeper in the sand or hiring anyone with 18 and a heartbeat, because lives depend on us. So when we fix the things that are broken with the environment, then we can put the bar back where it needs to be, which is, I need you to put on 100 pounds of gear on a high-rise strip, climb 20 stories, and then go to work and get my kid.
Yeah.
That's not a job for everyone.
No, not for T safe, 100%. There's so many questions coming at you as you drop that. Let me pull up the uh, co-pilot notes here, because there are so many. Luke Stevenson coming at you from the future, from the land down under. He's saying, how do we balance being honest about the downsides, risks of the job, critical incidents, injury, workload, etc., without scaring people off from joining?
I think that you balance the impact of all those things with the mental and physical wellness. Like, for example, you will be safer on a structure fire if you are fitter and stronger and more mobile. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For example, some of the line of duty deaths that we've had when people have fallen from an aerial or got lost in a primary search, how many of those were actually related to sleep deprivation? So it wasn't the job so much as that individual at that moment didn't have the cognitive ability to do what they had trained so many times and probably, completed successfully in other structure fires. So you're absolutely right, and it's a good point. It shouldn't be doom and gloom. And some people I've seen pushing back, oh, why are we talking about the bad side of the fire service? Because it's broken. If my femur was sticking out my leg, I'd probably talk about it a lot until someone fixed my femur, and then we can move on. But you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be doom and gloom. Like I said, this resilience piece, if we work through our trauma, you absolutely become, a better first responder. If I've been through some sort of abuse as a child and have found the tools to work through that, And now I'm on a call with a kid who, has been abused, or, whether it's a woman that's been physically abused or whatever it is. You now are able to empathize, and you're able to even use maybe little parts of your story to connect with that person, to get them to trust you, maybe to take them to the hospital, and, God forbid, getting, the rape analysis kit done or whatever needs to be done. Those struggles, that dark side of the fire service can be used in a very positive way.
Right.
So, but if we just do that polished Disney version hero stuff, not only are we doing a disservice as far as some of the dangers of the job, but also we're also telling a fairy tale, because the reality is 90% of what we do is EMS, or fire alarms. It's not the actual structural firefighting. So having that mentality of, hey, right from the front door, we don't get this very often. This is why it's so important to train, to drill, to do our fitness training, to go over our protocols, whatever it is, because everyone's able to do a 12 lead and a blood pressure like a damn champ. But, doing an RPM system for, a rope rescue call, that's something that you have to keep going. So, yeah, I think kind of went off on a tangent, but it
Beautiful
doesn't
tangent.
need to be all doom and gloom. But if we fix some of the environmental issues, it actually makes everything safer. Even you think of the wrecks. We just, had a few firefighters, Blake from Next Run, for example. I don't know what the backstory was, but there was an accident. Was that in any way, shape, or form related to sleep deprivation? The Bright Line accident in Delray, was that related to sleep? You know what I mean? So some of these, could they have been prevented if this crew was actually well rested? I don't know. I certainly am not going to, Monday morning quarterback it, but that's how we take away some of that doom and gloom. The same way as it's that kind of God, what's that term they use? I forget now. But if we keep saying, oh, you'll be an alcoholic and you have divorces, then you're going to be an alcoholic and have divorces. We got to break that cycle to where that's not the norm in the fire
Right.
service.
Just
So
create
our environment and our training and our bar can absolutely make the fire ground much, much safer.
No, I love it. Just quit being our own self-fulfilling prophecies type.
That's
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
No, absolutely. M. Mikowski wants to know, what is the biggest difference you have witnessed in yourself since your transition from full-time firefighter to full-time wellness champion? Which I like that title for you.
That does sound good. Heavyweight wellness champion.
There we go.
Well, the first thing, honestly, is my own health and happiness. One of the things when I transitioned out, and then the backstory of me transitioning out wasn't I want to leave the fire service. It was the last place I worked at. I tried so hard to make positive change, and you talk about a toxic environment that was, like Chernobyl. So it was one of those things for my own mental health, and then to be able to advocate and take this leap of faith with the podcast. That's why I stepped away. If I'd been at Anaheim, I'd still be wearing uniform now, hands down. But because, we are working 56, because we are getting mandatory, I also was like, well, if I'm going to yap about this, then if I step away, I can tell people like, hey, I feel better now. So my cognition has got better. My blood work has got better. My body composition has got better. My strength and conditioning has got better. My time, which is the most important. I just listed other stuff. Forget that. My time with my son, my sons, my son, my bonus boy, and my wife, the most important thing. Because the department before my last one, I was getting mandatory all the time. Even in Anaheim, I adored it. But even back then, my class was starting to fill the spots. But I got paid, I think it was 56 as my base salary, and I cleared 100 grand my first year
Just from the OT.
on nearly
Whoa.
all mandatory overtime.
Wow.
So I've seen an improvement in all the things. That does not me saying, so every firefighter should just stop. It's like, for me, it's like, okay, well then how can we take this 9 to 5 health and apply it to the 24s? Because I believe in 24s. I don't believe in chopping it up. How can we apply that so we can get closer to that while we're still on shift? And the answer again is another 24 between the shifts to give you as much rest and recovery as possible to get as close to baseline. We're never going to get it. It's always going to still be a downward slope, but it's a damn sight better than a 24-48. And then God forbid add a mandatory in there, and then you wonder why you just can't even see straight when you start having thoughts about doing bad things to yourself.
No, and one of the things I love that you said there was, it's not just that you felt better, like anecdotally, but your blood work was better, your body composition was better. Like actual physical things that you can measure were better, and that's powerful. That's a powerful part of it.
Yeah, my blood work. I use a company Transcend now, and can't speak highly enough of them. You have like the TRT stuff. Well, there's also a thing called peptides, which just helps you boost your own levels. Before I took anything, the initial baseline blood work. Now I'm actually sleeping at 50 years old. My T was 700.
Whoa,
So, and even one shift, it was 500. Was it? No, it was a little bit more than that. I think it was like the high fives, almost 600. But that was because I was diligent with my sleep practice. I was the one that had almost no vacation save because I would use it. I'm like, all right,
right.
mental health day. I understand my physiology, but then, add some sleep in. And now all of a sudden at 50, it's like 700. So this is a huge thing, as I'm sure, loads of people. When you are sleep deprived, it destroys your hormones, which not only affects, fertility and all kinds of other things, but also your mental health hugely. So, these are all completely interwoven. So I'm not saying everyone should go to 9 to 5. If you have had a mental health crisis or you're overcoming cancer, I don't recommend going back to shift. I think that days are a good alternative for you. But yeah, just trying to get close to a civilian one by giving more rest and recovery. It won't get all the way to where I am now, but it will certainly pull, way towards that direction.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Great question from Mikowski. Thank you. Jason Haynes said, "Do you see eventually?" You already answered this kind of because you talked about not a favor of chopping up the shift, but he said, "Do you see eventually shifts going to 8 or 12 hour shifts to get away from 24s, or switching to later start times like some departments currently do now, or are those half measures according to Gearing?"
No, so one of those two is great and the other one is terrible. So chopping up shifts, I'll give you some example of professions where they chop up shifts. Police officers, corrections, dispatchers, doctors, nurses. Have I mentioned anyone where the first thing you think of is some svelte athlete? So no, they are known to be awful. If you dive into the sleep medicine world, because obviously, to be fair, most of them are going to do days, nights to share the load for everyone. Your circadian rhythm can't keep up because you are telling the body, this is daytime, this is nighttime. The one advantage we have of having a firehouse, is that if you think about it, we're not telling ourselves that, oh, we're sleeping in the day and going to work at night.
Right.
You just, you suck it up for 24 hours, but day is day and night is night still. The other thing, which I think is completely legitimate, when I think about, as a firefighter and a paramedic, and in some stations I had a boat and other things too. If I come in and we've got a high call load, by the time I'm even done with checkouts and training and a workout, it's already 8 p.m. whilst running calls. So the thought of then leaving and someone coming in and having to do all the same thing just doesn't make any sense to me either. Now, the part of the two-part question that makes a lot of sense is a completely free fix when applied with the 2472, not instead of it, is the start times. And what's interesting, and it's very strange, it shows you how kind of blinkered we are, in our solutions. Um, to me, when you listen to people, oh, we changed the start time, they just changed the AM to PM with the same number. Now we do 7 p.m. The absolute sweet spot, in my opinion, and it's not an absolute for everyone depending on their dynamic, but I've always worked in the city, Orlando and Anaheim, Hialeah. So it's busy, there's traffic, there's rush hours. So if you started at 12 noon, you're going to work, you're oncoming. When I worked 24/48, I only woke up with my family 1 out of 3 days,
Mhm.
because the first day I'm getting up at 5 and they're all still asleep. The second day after shift, by the time I get home, they've all gone. The
Right.
third day is the only day when I actually wake up next to my wife and have breakfast with my sons. If you start at noon, you wake up, you have breakfast with your family, they all go off to school and work, and then you go to the station. The person who you're relieving got murdered all night. Instead of having an all call at 7 and saying, get out, now they can sleep. Their stuff's checked out. They got nothing to do except run calls. So you let them sleep. So now when they drive home, they've actually got a few hours. It's safer for them. You listen to a lot of people that, for example, run the cadres for special forces selection. The military has had numerous deaths of those instructors driving home after and wrecking. So it's insanity that we deliberately wake firefighters up at this, crack of dawn to go to the station or even to go home when they're so sleep deprived. So now, we'll come in, and Anaheim used to do this. I'll take your gear off. You stay in bed still. I'll take your gear off. I put mine on. At midday, if you're still sleeping, if you wake up, then beautiful. We'll do pass on and we'll move on. But the fact that nothing is so important that I need to tell the person I'm relieving. I can write it on a whiteboard. Hey, we need, refill narcs, or, whatever the thing is.
Sure.
So that is genius to me. The person who's on shift gets to actually rest before they drive home, so they don't become a stain on the freeway, bridge. And then that person 2 out of 3 days now gets to wake up and have breakfast with their family. And so with this PM one for me, and I don't know if it's just other people, but for me, if I've got to work at night, I can't relax that day. I'm just thinking about going to work. But that 12 noon, let's say you've got a 90-minute, an hour commute to work, you're getting up, having this slow morning with your family, and then you go to the station. You get there, you check out your rig, now it's lunchtime, and then off your day goes. So I love that idea, and it's completely free. So if we did that with a 24/72, and then we integrated I like GMR, AMR's parent company. They have a thing called nurse navigation, where you integrate into the 911 system. And so they take all the kind of alpha, omega, and even some of the Bravo calls. You don't even run a call. Those three things, we would revolutionize the physical and mental health.
Nice. Do you see more and more organizations moving towards that removal of the alpha, maybe even the Bravo calls from the queue, so to speak?
Yeah, it's happening. I'm actually I just did an interview with them. I forget the number now. But Jared Troutman is one of the two guys, if you can Google that. But it's genius. I mean, it really is. And what they do is also they start this road of care with these people. They can set urgent care clinic appointments. They can get them an Uber to go there. And then if you need actual prescriptions written, then they can do an actual telehealth visit. But it just takes, and the way they look at it is they call it a 3-tier system. I think it's genius. You've got ALS, BLS, which we go to, and then you've got the rest. That never even comes to us. The dispatchers send it straight to them. Obviously, they have the ability to send it back if it's been, categorized wrong or the patient gets worse. But that way, the patient only spends a few $100 instead of thousands for an ER visit. An ER bed stays open for a real emergency, and that station didn't wake up for that call. So I think it's another imperative, fix for the fire service.
I'm definitely going to keep beating the drum on it. I know you will, and I think it's a direction we have to go because we just keep piling more and more on the firefighter shoulders, the first responder shoulders, and of course, they just shrug and keep going, or trying, ineffectively or effectively as how you want to look at it. Rob Fisher, my man from Las Vegas, coming at you, said, since we're talking about sleep, James, can you talk about sleep supplements you use or recommend for improving your sleep?
Absolutely. So that whole sleep hygiene thing is real. So, trying not to eat too late. Caffeine, I think a lot of us underestimate the half-life of caffeine. So really, if you're going to drink, I mean, really you want to do it before lunchtime if you're going to have coffee, because that will mess up. I think it's dopamine. I forget which one it is, but anyway, it blocks your sleep cascade. The blue blocking glasses, I wear those at night, and I just have the lens in my regular kind of nighttime reading glasses, or TV watching glasses. Those are excellent. Having the station cold or your home cold, so either side of about 67 degrees, because we naturally are supposed to, our body temperature is supposed to lower, because if we were outside, especially today, you'd be freezing out there as a prehistoric man or woman. And then lights in the bedroom. So even I've got tape over the smoke alarm. For some reason, it has a red light, I guess, to show that the battery's working. So as many electronic screens and lights that you can dampen or turn around or even remove from your room, those things really, really work. Which is why, in bunk rooms, when they put LED screens and they do all calls or make up an entire station for one call, it couldn't be further from trying to help, with the sleep when it comes to the fire station itself. I'm a big fan of individual dorms, but that has to come with, you need to be in communal spaces. We're a firehouse, there's a conversation there too. Sleep supplements, Dr. Kirk Parsley, who was a Navy SEAL, pre 9/11. So then he went to med school, came back as the SEAL's physician, and he was on Barbell Shrugged, an old strength and conditioning podcast. And absolutely, I'll credit him as the reason why I started mine, because I heard him talking about sleep deprivation and I was blown away. I'm like, why are we not talking about this in the fire service? He's got a sleep supplement. I think it's just called Sleep Remedy, Doc Parsley's Sleep Remedy. That is phenomenal. Rescue One CBD, John Vaught, he has found a way. I've had a couple of CBD companies on that I've used, zero THC, but John has found a way of getting that zero down to, like, I think they test to the billionth. And their Sleep Remedy has terpenes as well. So it's the kind of molecules from lavender and some of these other things that we know help sleep. I mean, that stuff is incredible too. So Rescue One CBD, their night formula is amazing. Doc Parsley's remedy is amazing. And then I love Headspace, the meditation app. That's a really good one. They have some kind of down regulation ones. And then Newcalm is a phenomenal technology for down regulating. And that's become an app now. It used to be like a big box in like Delta rooms and Navy SEAL rooms and NFL rooms. Incredible technology, but they even have a kind of one that you play through your speaker at night, and it actually helps you get into a deep sleep. So,
Oh, really? So
you
dam
can play
regulate. When
all
you
those.
say the term dam regulating, can you elaborate what dam regulating is?
Yeah, so down regulation. So sympathetic is fight or flight. What we want to do is, and I think this is, so I'll give you the backstory of Newcom. There was an incredibly intelligent scientist who, the way it's been described is if we filled a room with our best scientists, he'd still be smarter than all of them. He's since passed away, but he decided to study the frequency of the brain in different emotional states, from fight and flight all the way through to flow state or a version of flow state and everything in between. It took him, I think, like 15 years. Then he was like, okay, well, now we've measured them. Can we influence the brain to go into these states? And he created this, when you're listening, it sounds like music, but beneath it are all these kind of undulation, sounds. And it's the only one that's got this pattern. So it's not the beats that you would hear on Spotify. Each file is like a gig when you're listening to it. But they have one called Power Nap. And I tell you, if you want to punctuate the shift, it's only 20 minutes. So you put on a sleep mask and headphones. So you could obviously go back to the bunk room or sit in your car or whatever you want to do, as long as you feel safe. Put that on. It brings that fight and flight down to parasympathetic, to that relaxed state. And so, you might have been cutting a family out of a minivan at 3 and you want to walk through as daddy through the front door at, 9 or maybe even, 1 o'clock because you've changed your start time. But it is so good. And it literally, whether you like it or not, it is going to down regulate you. So you have those. There's one called Focus that I use when I was writing Kinder. I was using it. Would be a great thing to put in when you're writing reports, because it just kind of gives you that focus without caffeine or anything. And then, like I said, the sleep one they have, it works for some people. Not everyone likes it, but it's this kind of, you can choose rain or low music, and it's supposed to keep everyone, keep you in a deep sleep longer.
I love that.
So,
I use a noise generator already, so I'm already super interested personally. What's the one you said? Power Nap is made by? Is there a specific?
well, yeah, those are all the same company. It's Newcom,
Newcom.
Nucalm. Yeah. I mean,
Newcom. Okay, okay.
I can't say, speak highly enough of it. My mum in Portugal, she uses it all the time.
Okay.
My son sleeps with he likes the sleep one. So, I've watched it just help so many people. And then, when you down regulate, again, if we're talking about performance in the fire service, if you have a quiet mind, that's when you get in that flow state. That's when you start feeling the braille in the primary search and go, I know where I am. That's a window. I remember where the door is. This is a bed. So it's, it was initially for a kind of performance, but even from a mental health standpoint and a cancer standpoint, it's taken away that stress. It's allowing you to have that kind of emotional exhale, if you like.
Love it. So let's talk about this right here. which just came out late last year. Um, totally different from. I mean, I say totally different. It's still, but it's not. I was the novel. Is it right to call it a novel? How would you classify it?
Yeah, I mean, it is that, as we said before we hit record, almost everything in the book is true generationally, but the fiction element is the person that you're seeing it through their eyes. So, people that know me, people that have worked with me, they'll recognize calls that Jack goes on. His father, now you're in like the 1980s era, so a lot of real things happen in England then. And then his grandfather, we're going back now to kind of World War II era France, and all those things are completely true as well. So, and that was what was nice about it. There's so much gold in history that you get to kind of pull from. But it is a novel, because One More Light, my first book, really was a collection of short stories.
Right.
And the stories, as you know, were just kind of like the opening the door to the takeaway of each chapter. So sleep deprivation, mental health, obesity, back injury, whatever the thing was. This one, I wanted to immerse everyone in a story, and especially tell the multi-generational trauma story. So I wanted the firefighter to represent who we are and what we actually do, because most of the stuff on television does a huge disservice, and again, it kind of Disneyfies what we do, and every rescue is a success, and then we get all PC, and now this is multi generation, multi-sexual orientation firehouse, and everything's perfectly balanced. And
Right.
we got so far from the raw, visceral element of what we do.
Reality.
And we are beautifully diverse, but we don't look like models, and we're not getting upset because someone said our gender wrong in a fire station. We're trying to help people. um so I wanted to just get back into that, the nuts and bolts, the blood and guts, and the all the horrible stuff that we see that is society. And again, not doom and gloom, but pull that out. um I just watched, I think it's called Asphalt City, a Sean Penn film, and he's
Okay.
a New York paramedic. That's the level of grit. If anyone hasn't seen it, watch it. There's a
Okay.
fire
No, I haven't
scene
seen
at
that.
the end, which will make you want to throw the television out the window. But prior to that fire scene, they did a really good job. So you had that modern day firefighter, so we can relate, but then everyone else who's not in our job can really finally see what we do. But then the origin story of addiction, of some of the mental health struggles, of homelessness, because I feel like there's a lack of compassion and empathy in some of these areas. It's like, oh, just get a job, what's wrong with you? But this person didn't dream of living under a bridge with a needle in their arm when they were in kindergarten.
Right.
Things happen. So you've got this, modern day firefighter, but then you've got this multi-generational trauma story woven in. And this, the lead character, Jack, is, when you meet him, he's starting to struggle already. And hopefully initially you think, oh, that's because of X. And then by the time you
Yeah.
finish the book, hopefully you're thinking, oh, I didn't realize that it was all these things, So that was why I wrote it. And then really my ultimate goal is to make a TV show. I
Oh,
had
nice.
chicks that did, Chicago Fire. I've had the guys from Tacoma FD. So they're entertainment, but I really want to finally put this on the screen, because if you want to reach the most people and debunk the myths, like firefighters only work 10 days a month and they have the best schedule ever, for example, then you've got to do it through the screen. So if they can make Backdraft 2 and that got money, then I think that kinda can.
It's a very good point. It's a very good argument considering what you were talking about. And I really wanted to ask you this because Jack Gentile, if I got the last pronunciation halfway correct,
You
and
did?
James Geering, that's a JG and a JG. So that is a personification of you, at least, even though it is a fictionalized.
Yeah, there's a lot of, Easter eggs, kind of, if within the
Okay.
book, absolutely.
I kept
Um,
picturing you as him, even though the parts I was reading was very, very, like you say, gritty and visceral and yeah, just very. But I still pictured your face as I was reading it. I don't know if that's fair to you or not.
yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I certainly don't want it to be about me, because it's not.
Sure.
But they say write what you know, and so if I start writing, you know, like I set the guy as an FDNY firefighter, and I'm going to the subway and I'm doing rope rescues on a skyscraper. I've never done those.
Right.
I'd be just pulling it out my rear end. So it had to be, ingrained in my story. But, a lot of the depths that he gets to, and some of these other things, like the things that he endured as a child and his father did, and all these other things, that's more fictionalized. And so that's then me drawing off some of the people I've had on the show
Sure.
with their raw visceral struggles and infusing it into this story. So
Well, brother, I hope that man, I think it would make a phenomenal series. Or if it's a movie, movies great. I love well done series, especially because they get to get more into the characters, more into the depth,
yeah.
typically speaking. That would be phenomenal. Uh, Excellent. Okay, so we're talking about books, so I'll move to one of my favorite questions I love to ask all firefighters that come on the show. And I've asked you this before, but book or books that you think firefighters should be reading? It doesn't have to be a firefighter book specifically, but what do you think firefighters should be reading?
Um, I'm gonna go away because obviously Book of Search and some of the other ones,
And kinder,
operationally,
and one more light, kinder,
and
one
those
more light.
two.
Absolutely.
So Sebastian Junger's Tribe, and I don't
Tribe.
know if we talked about this last time, but I'll keep saying that. I think that was such an amazing look at tribalism in our country, tribalism in uniform. And then when you really dive into that, you understand why our retirees struggle, why someone struggles if they get fired, if they get injured, that separation of tribe, and then organizational betrayal. When your tribe turns their back on you, how detrimental that is. And he follows uh these, I think it's Marines, but Restrepo, there was the uh they call it OP, I think it was, some of the highest level of fighting and combat in the entire war, from what I understand. And it wasn't when they were together fighting that they struggled. It was when they back to, I think it was Italy, and they kind of
Okay.
demobbed.
Right,
And
right.
that's when they started fighting, because he was an embedded journalist for a long time. So that is a phenomenal one. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor
Yes.
Frankl,
Oh yeah.
another another incredible one. So those would be a couple. I mean, there's so many. I've had so many people on the show. And then Chasing the Scream,
Okay.
Johan Hari. So that one dives into
Say
the world of addiction. And by
screen
the
or scream?
Scream, yeah,
Okay, okay.
with an M
Yeah.
for mouse. Um, if you want to really understand the origin story of drug prohibition, and how it was really founded on job justification and racism, and on the back end of the failure of alcohol prohibition, and all the issues that it's caused. And we all know, we see it, we literally respond to it all the time. And then how OxyContin was infused, and then the black tar heroin, and programs around the world that have actually addressed it and decriminalized and had success. That is an amazing book, because if you turn on the TV, this is your brain on drugs, I'm tough on crime. Well, has it worked? No, it hasn't, because a lot of countries don't have gangs, they don't have school shootings, they don't have a lot of things, the homelessness levels that we have. So that is another one, kind of getting out the fire service a bit and just looking at, again, the reason why we run so many calls on so many desperate people. Again, compassion and empathy, looking at an addict as someone who's struggling rather than a criminal. I think that's another national conversation we need to have.
No, I love it. I love the discussion and Chasing the Scream. I haven't heard that one before. And Tribe has been on here many times. You may have been the first to bring it up. I'm not sure, but I'd love to give you credit for it. And so, absolutely. So we do a thing here called the 5 questions for firefighters. They've evolved over time since the last time you were here. We are currently on version 4.0, and you are only the second person to ever be exposed to these 5 questions. So,
Excellent.
are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
There are no correct answers. They are just your opinions, and the points are arbitrary, assigned by me with the help of the audience. So the first question coming at you is: you're the probie once more. You're the probie once more. You're back on shift, and you have to cook the meal for the firehouse. They're telling you have to cook it. What is your go-to meal?
I used to make bangers and mash. So being British, it's a very British meal. So it's sausages, mashed potatoes, and peas. So I would always lean it. If it was supposed to be like a, first meal, I'm not an incredible chef. I learned the not the hard way. I learned there was a great chef in my class in Hialeah. I think he was, a chef in a restaurant before, and he cooked so well that when we got calls, they left him at the station. So I
Mm,
always said, I'm never going to be so good that I miss a fire. So I always
nice.
cooked okay. But yeah, trying to just do some of the British meals, but that's kind of one of the ones. Bring in like real British sausages, but yeah, bangers and mash, British
Bangers and
meal.
mash. There you go. Easy max points for leaning into your British heritage, of course.
Well, there
But
we go.
I also love the fact that you said don't get so good that you get left at the station and miss the call. So I absolutely love it. Mamowski said -1 point for the peas. I don't know if I agree with that. You got to eat. You got to eat your veggies. It's Jobtown. This is question number 2. Max points so far, but it's Jobtown. It's time. You're en route and responding. It's like the scene from Backdraft where he's slapping that tape into that cassette deck. What song are you playing while en route?
I don't know a specific song, but I'd play the Falling in Reverse radio on Spotify. They have some
Oh,
great
okay.
screamers. Yeah, it's got to be kind of screamer rock if you're on your way to a fire. I love hip hop. You know, I like doing that when I'm doing my martial arts and stuff. But yeah, on the way to a fire, I think Falling in Reverse would be a
Falling in
good track.
Reverse. Do you have a specific? There is a Spotify playlist. That's why I'm asking for a specific song.
Yeah,
So
well, Zombified. That's a good one.
Zombified. Okay.
Because yeah, that reflects many things in society, but that's a damn good song too. So
And not only do we share a birthday, but we also share a love for Falling in Reverse radio because that is one of the things I love to listen to at the gym when I'm throwing weights around.
yeah,
So
they're a great band. Then their songs don't sound the same. Then they'll redo the song with just the piano and it sounds completely different. So yeah, one of my favorites.
awesome. Max points for Zombified by Falling in Reverse. Number 3, whose boots, past, present, or future, would you like to spend 24 hours in? You are that person for 24 hours to get their perspective.
I've got to go old school. I was mad about Bruce Lee when I was younger. So, and if you think about what he was doing back in the 70s, I mean, even if you watched it's not watched, if you read The Tao of Jeet Kune Do and some of his other books, he basically was doing CrossFit back then. He was, you go cycle through all these different compound movements and, you look at his physicality and his flexibility and his explosiveness. I mean, obviously it works. So going completely away from the fire service to be Bruce Lee for 24 hours, I think would be pretty interesting, especially back in the 70s.
I love the answer. And especially because you mentioned Jeet Kune Do and absolutely phenomenal. So I'll give easy max points. And this is the thing. This is a brand new question, so it's only been answered twice. And so I don't know what direction it's going to go as it evolves through the course of the. So you're kind of setting the direction of it when you answer it with the way you answered. Number 4, max points so far, by the way, 1, 2, and 3. Number 4, you are retired. You are sitting on the beach enjoying Mai Tais. What do you want to hear through the grapevine that the people you used to work with, how do you want to hear that they describe you to the new hires?
I'm literally going to use the road that I'm on now because I retired. I only had 14 years on when I stepped away. But I hope that people say, we used to work 56 hours a week, sometimes 80, but we don't anymore. And he was part of the reason. Because
Wow.
to me, that if you can leave that legacy, and again, it's not just me, there are so many voices here, but if you were part of that movement that moved the needle, so now, addiction and suicide is a rarity rather than a frequency. I mean, what a legacy to leave. So I would say that.
Brother, I love that. I love that answer. Not only is it on point with what we've been talking about, but it represents why you're resonating with the American Fire Service and why your mission, your connection to your mission. So I absolutely love it. Final question is heavy fire. And this is the question that'll never change. That's what I always say. Heavy fire, searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Oh, first in on VES. That's why you get into it in the first place. Now I'm a truckie at heart too, so there's also the roof, but but no,
Fair.
absolutely. I mean, Recio, you know what I mean? Rescue is first. So, and I took Eric Wheaton's oh my goodness, what the hell is it? VES.
Okay.
VES. I don't know why my brain's working. It's late here now. But and that was actually kind of late in the fire service. All the training that I had, the VES really came towards the end. It was at the Orlando Fire Conference. But I think that's just such a beautiful way of addressing that one little pocket. I can't get in. It's suicide to go in this way. It would be stupid. We're gonna have claps, we're gonna lose people, but there's one bedroom we can get to. So yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, 100% why, again, that mental clarity, that physical fitness standards, the constant realistic training, because that is extremely hard. I mean, I would argue, one of the hardest things you'd ever have to do, especially on a upper floor, is do
Yes.
VES, through a window. So to me, why not be good at the hardest thing and hopefully be first up when they need you?
I love it. And absolutely with the alacrity of the answer. You didn't even hesitate when you answered. No thought at all. It was VES right out the gate. And if you want to hear a cool accounting of a cool VES right out the gate, I think chapter 2 or 3, I forget which one it is, but there's a VES off a ladder right out the get, not to give any spoilers. So it's very early in the book. So there you go. 5 for 5 max points from James Geering. Absolutely crushed the 5 questions for firefighters with bangers and mash, falling in reverse, VES, Bruce Lee. So pretty good answers. That officially puts 281 scraps in the books. James Geering, I can't say thank you enough for spending your evening with us. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, find out more about your podcast, find out where to get the books, tell them where they can do so.
Well, the cool thing is now, if you Google James Geering with 2 E's, I come up. It used to be that there was a Australian drug dealer and a pedophile from Manchester, England that would show up first, but they're now way down in the search. So if
You've
you
overcome
Google
the algorithm.
we have. So now we've kind of pushed them into the number of 4 or 5 page. But yeah, if you Google Behind the Shield, you can find it on all the podcast apps. There's 2 Behind the Shields. I'll always give them a shout out. There's a gaming one, like a Dungeons Dragons one. They were there first with a wooden shield, and they're still going, I think. So good for them. And then mine's got an axe and Halligan little diamond. And then the books you can find on Audible. They're both now on audiobook, and then Amazon as well. So yeah, but thank you so much, mate. I mean, you're coming on my show soon, and I can't wait to discuss your new book and the collaboration that you put together. But I love these conversations. I'm honored to be able to talk, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, brother, I love it, man. And again, everybody should get it. You will not regret it. The story is phenomenal, and it's not what you expect. That's the best part. So I don't want to say too much about it. Last question to throw at you, because I like to do this. I might have 2 more questions, honestly. But the first one is something we started doing this year. Again, you're the second one. Rick Lasky last week was the guinea pig of it. But we're trying to do what is called the Scrap Challenge, and that's where you throw a challenge out to the scrappers that are listening right now, and it's a challenge that they can complete before next week. And so I like to throw it at you and say, what is the challenge that James Geering wants to throw at the most hardcore of the scrappers that they can try to complete before next week?
I'm going to throw a challenge, and it can be done in one conversation. Ask yourself and have this conversation with your family. Why do I not deserve to be home as much as the people that make the decisions in my department? If you can come up with a reason and justify why you should work 56 or 80 hours, then send me an email. I'd love to hear it. But in 8 years, I haven't had a single person be able to justify. So if you can have that conversation, you can challenge your firehouse conversation to be, why do we work the hours that we work? When you are asked to perform at the highest level, truly where lives are at stake. And if you can't come up with a reason, because, just a quick preamble, we don't work 1 day on, 2 days off. The civilian day is 9 hours with a 1 hour lunch, so 8 hours. So we work 3 days on, crammed together, bleeds into the second day. So you didn't get a day off then, from midnight to 8. So you only have one. So it's 3 days on, 1 day off, or 30 days a month. So once we debunk our own fairy tales and people really start questioning it, that's when you in your own department are going to be part of the movement to change your working environment, give yourself more rest and recovery, be a better paramedic and firefighter, and most importantly, be at home more often. That's my challenge.
I love the challenge, brother. Thank you for sending it. And the final question before I do the wrap up, which is, I'm always looking for more. And this is an exciting question for me to ask you, because you have interviewed 1,028 of the most phenomenal people in our field. So, but I'd like to ask, who's someone you think should be on the scrap and should have a conversation on here and spread their message?
Oh my goodness.
I know it's not a fair question to you. I know.
Yeah, no, I think I haven't even got a person specifically. I have to go back and look, and I'll definitely send you some names. But I think where I find it interesting is people from other countries that do what we do, either paramedics or fire, because we are in kind of an echo chamber. So, I just saw, for example, there was a psychologist that friended me on LinkedIn, and she works with the Lithuanian fire department, the psychologist, like with the academies, I think. So I'd love to find out what she does,
Right.
So I think that's more of the thing, is getting outside. And this is why my guest list is very diverse, and finding some of these other people. But again, I mean, one I'll give you would be a great one, would be Kirk Parsley, the Navy SEAL that became, he like that's what started my podcast. So that would be just one. There's been so many great firefighters out there, and I'm sure you've had a lot of them on yourself. But I love going outside of what we know is normal, because it's amazing how a ballet dancer or a model or a golf professional will say something like, "Oh my God, that we need to do that in the fire service." So yeah, I mean, there's so many, but yeah, Kirk Parsi would be a great one. And then, if you have any international firefighters, it's so interesting. Like the Germans, for example, it's like a degree program. They're kind of classified out of high school, and then they spend years training to be a firefighter. The Japanese going from almost no rope rescue to world champions, blowing everyone else out the water. That's where I find it. Those are the really interesting conversations that you don't hear on
Right.
most other podcasts.
I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you for that. And so we'll get to the housekeeping. Go to patreon.com, the Vigilantes. We got the Discord up and running. There's conversations in the Discord every day amongst the Vigilantes. They're the ones who came up with the scrap challenge. And if you want to impact the scrap, if you want to have a say-so on what questions are asked and who the guests will be, man, go become a Vigilante. It's a lot of fun. Best $5 a month I think you can spend if you want to hang out with like-minded people who think the way you do about the fire service. Yes. Something Sam will be posting the link for the after party. James has agreed to come, even though it's late in night and he's given up some of his sleep, which he does hold dear. He's going to hang out for 20 minutes in the after party, and you can ask him direct questions. So show up. And we always say, James, that it's supposed to be a roast of the guest. It is the mildest non-existent roast ever in the history of, but all that being said, next week it's Steve Schaefer out of Boston coming on to talk, followed by Eric Hankins, finally getting him on here. So we are kicking off 2025 in absolute style. James Geering being the lead. Enough jabbering from me. Let's get to the after party. Thank you once again, James, for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Audience, I can't say thank you enough for the great questions. You make the scrap magical. It would not exist without you. Thank you for tuning in live. I love you all. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tones stay silent unless it is burning. Everybody, stay safe out there.